Hey guys, it's Penguin here, and welcome back to another gold making video. In today's video, we are going to be going over a TSM tutorial specifically focusing around alchemy. Now, if you are somebody who has an alchemist or knows of alchemy, and you have either experienced or heard about Procs, what I'm talking about is Transmute Mastery, giving you additional items per craft. We have the same thing with Potion Mastery and Elixir Mastery, and we even have Procs in BFA regarding the tools of the trade, Silas Proc. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over how to actually reflect those Procs and have TSM show you correct profit. Now, depending on your experience, whether you have actually dealt with these crafts or not before, you may or may not know that TSM by default does not reflect these proc chances. So for example, if you are crafting arcane crystals into arcanite bars, because of Transmute Mastery, you gain about 20% additional materials. However, TSM does not calculate that, so depending on the crafting cost and all of that, it will likely show that it is unprofitable, even though it truly actually is profitable. And unless you are somebody who has a calculator, you do mental math, or you have an external spreadsheet to calculate this percentage and this extra profit for you, it can be a little bit confusing when people are saying, oh yes, I'm crafting this item for profit, while your TSM shows you it's in the negative. So in today's video, we are going to be solving that issue by making sure TSM reflects what we are actually calculating. Now, right off the bat, before we get any further, I do just want to say that I did not create this. Now, throughout the years, there have been many post videos or just comments about people who have already figured this out. The latest, or I should say the earliest post I have found was from Billis, who's a very popular TSM and groups provider, and that dates back all the way to 2017 when I kind of first started gold making, and he made a post about this subject. I found about 4 more creators who have done the exact same thing within the past 5 years. So I am kind of just making this into a more updated video explaining what's going on. With that being said, if this video is a little bit confusing or something just doesn't sit right with you, feel free to look at these older resources if you want more information on the topic. But without further ado, let's get straight into this video. Thank you so much for watching, and here we go. Now, to first start out, before we start jumping into TSM and changing all of these equations, I want to first kind of walk you through the methodology of what's happening. So I will be using Transmute Mastery and crafting arcanite bars as our example, and I will be showcasing exactly what this kind of proc does, and then how TSM calculates it. So firstly, if we look in game and I hover over arcanite bars, TSM is currently reflecting a negative 22.4 gold loss. Now, right off the bat, you would probably be like, okay, this is a really bad craft, I should not do this, but what if I told you that actually this is a 10 gold profit item?
No, it's not true. That's impossible!
So, in fact, you're not losing gold, you're actually making 10 gold profit, which is pretty good. And because this is a little bit more in depth, I'm going to be actively typing in a notepad, so bear with me. And so to get started, let's set a scene and walk through this. So just like that tooltip said, the final bar, the final, crafted item is the arcanite bar, and currently you can sell arcanite bars for about 172 gold each. Technically, that on screen is the exact price. Now, in order to craft this arcanite bar, you need 2 items. You need an arcane crystal and a thorium bar. Now, I have added those 2 resources together because thorium bars are so cheap. I am just going to call this arcane crystal because it cost 1 crystal to make 1 bar, and that together cost 185 gold and 80 silver. So right there, that is our crafting cost versus our sale price. And so if you were to craft this without Transmute Mastery, you would be losing gold, as it costs you almost 186 gold to craft, and you're only selling for 172. But this is where that Transmute Mastery comes in. So as you guys know, Transmute Mastery is about 20% extra materials. This is give or take, but this is about the average. So let's say we buy 100 crystals to transmute. That means we bought 100 crystals for 185 gold each. That's a total cost of about, 18,580 gold. But because we are a Transmute Master, we're going to gain about 20% more materials. We are crafting 100, so we're going to proc about an extra 20 bars. So we have 100 arcane bars queued. That's going to cost 100 crystals. We're going to end up for a total of 120 bars by the end of crafting. So if we want to think about this in terms of crafting cost, we have our total of 120 bars, and we still only paid 18,580 gold because, those 20 bars were extra. They didn't cost us any more. So if we take that original crafting cost of 18,580, divide it by the 120, as we now have that many bars compared to just 100, our crafting cost per bar reduces to 154.83 gold. So this is our new crafting cost per Arcanite bar. Now you're like, okay, that is way too complicated. I don't want to have to think about that and do multiple equations every single time, which is how we get that quick little conversion, which you take the original crafting cost, which we have 185.80 gold, and then we divide by 1.2, and that gets us our new crafting cost of 154 gold. So if you guys have watched any of my previous videos talking about Transmute Mastery, I say to divide your crafting cost by this in order to get your true crafting cost, and this is exactly what I mean. But, okay, this is how I generally calculate it, if I'm going about my day, but you're going to see in just a second that TSM does it a little bit differently. Which I apologize once again if this gets confusing. Feel free to rewatch this part or ask additional questions in the comments down below and I'll help you out. But right here, this section right here, we have basically defining by crafting cost. So instead of paying our original crafting cost of 185, our new crafting cost is 154. However, TSM doesn't think about crafting cost, and instead it thinks about item value. So let's explain this again. So what we're originally going to do is buy 100 crystals, which therefore we're crafting 100 bars. Now, like I said, we're selling bars, so instead of looking at crafting cost, we're looking at value. So if we were to get 100 bars, times the value of 171.89 gold, that means our total value is 17,198 gold. So originally what we should expect after buying and crafting these bars is about 17,000 gold once we sell it on the auction house. But like I said before, we will proc about an extra 20 bars. Sorry, I'll make sure they're spelled correctly. So yet again, we are getting a total of 120 bars. Now, because we are getting that extra 20 bars, think about that as, extra value. So we have 20 bars times that extra value, which would still be the unit price. So, we're getting about 20 more of the bars, which are valued at 172 gold, which means we're getting an extra 3,439.6 gold. So not only are we getting the, standard value of just 100 bars, because we're proccing an extra 20, we're gaining even more gold and almost about 3,500 more. So if we add that together, that's a total value of about 20,638 gold. And there we go. That is the actual number. Now, this is where it might get a little bit confusing, so bear with me. TSM still thinks of a per craft basis. So what this means is that TSM is basically still thinking you are crafting 100 times. So this is a per craft, which means you are doing 100 crafts. So what it does, it takes that total value and divides it by your number of crafts to get your craft value. So our total value would be 2637 divided by 100, and so our new value is 206.38 gold. I'm just rounding up. Technically, it would be this, but we have silver, which only is 2, so we're just going to move that up to right there. So this is our value per craft. And so you're like, okay, where are you going with this? So this is what TSM is valuing per craft, aka what it is reflecting on the tooltip. Now, of course, there is an auction house cut, so you have to take that away from it, which you just multiply by 0.95, so you get an actual item value of 196.06, and then you take that from the crafting cost, which our crafting cost is that 185.80 right there, which means a leftover profit of 10.26 gold, which if you guys refer to the screenshot which I showed you previously, and I'll have on screen right now, that is indeed the profit reflected on the TSM screen. Now, keep in mind, I believe it's about 2 silver off, but that's just because of rounding, so if you didn't round like I did, you would have that exact number. But TSM is now saying that you're making 10 gold profit per craft. And there we go. That is the long, drawn-out methodology of what TSM is doing. So traditionally, if you are calculating this either with a spreadsheet or on its own, most likely you might be doing it by crafting cost. However, TSM decides to do it by item value, which is how the tooltips look like this. So now we are going to transition into game yet again and show you exactly how to set this up. And alright, so we are in game and we're going to want to open up our TSM window. Now you can utilize a fresh profile if you like. I'm just going to be using a profile that I already have. It does not matter, it's just strictly up to you. So what we're going to do is make a new group for the items we're talking about. In this case, I am doing Transmute Mastery, so I'm going to call this Transmutes. Keep in mind, if you have decided to follow this tutorial for Silas Procs or Elixirs or Potion Mastery, feel free to rename this to Potions. And as you follow this tutorial, you will change the 1.2 to basically whatever decimal fits your needs. But here we go. So we have our group, and this is where you're going to put any of the items that you want to affect in this group. For example, we are doing Arcanite bars. Generally, you would look it up in a base group. However, they are already grouped in my bars right here, so I'm just going to take it and drag it into Transmutes. Also, for the case, just because titanium is also a transmute, because you can turn 8 Serenite bars into 1 titanium, so we can also put it in Transmutes. If you have any other ones, feel free to put it in there. Also, potions, elixirs, whatever. But once these are grouped, we are going to be creating 2 operations. The first one we will be doing is crafting, and this is where the magic happens. So you can override. If you see #default here, you can just delete it, but we're going to override and add more operations. You may or may not have your own right here, but we're going to create a new and call it whatever you like. Just to keep up with the theme, we'll call it Transmutes. Now, I'm not going to go in depth about the restock quantities. I highly recommend following a crafting operation tutorial, but let's just say we want to create a stack. We'll set the max restock quantity to 200. Then you're going to want to set your minimum profit. Let's say every single time I craft these bars, I want a, let's just say 15 gold profit. I will leave it like that. If you would prefer a percentage, you could do 10% crafting. That means a 10% profit. You can change this to 15. You can change it to 25, whatever you like. To keep it simple, let's put 15 gold. Then this is where the magic happens, and this is the override default craft value. Now, if you guys are a little bit new to TSM, sorry, I did not mean to close the window. If you go to settings, crafting, these two methods is how TSM determines profit. So your default craft value is how TSM defines your crafted item. Default material cost is how it determines the cost of your materials. So right here, what this is basically saying, if we hover over the Arcanite bars, it is taking the first variable that is valid. So DB min buyout is first. If we look over, DB min buyout is 171.98, so it is using that value. Then it's multiplying by 0.95, as that is the auction house cut. So 171.98 times 0.95 is how it is valuing this craft. Then it's using that number minus the crafting cost of 185.8, which is why it's getting that negative 22 gold profit. However, like we had just discussed before, this is not taking into account the extra materials. So what we have to do, go back to our operation, which I named Transmutes, and we're going to override this cost. And what you're going to see right here is exactly that default method which we just looked at. Now, some of you may not have this right here. I highly recommend adding it in, as that is the auction house cut. And so all we have to do is make this nice and pretty, put some parentheses around it, and we are going to multiply it by 1.2. 1.2 because we're making about a 20% extra materials, so we're doing 1.2 times the value of those materials. Basically what we did previously in that methodology, but just in a simple equation. So now every single craft that happens, we can already see it reflected in the tooltip. It is not valuing a single craft at 1 bar. It is now valuing it at 1.2 bars. And that is really it. Already we're seeing it the 10 gold profit, which we just calculated, which means this is working. However, there are a few things we have to adjust real quick. The first one is our min profit. So like I just said, I told you to set this profit to what you want to make per bar. However, remember we just changed our crafting value. So no longer is our value at a 1 bar instance, it is at a per 1.2 bars. So in order for our profit to reflect that, we also need to times it by 1.2. Because if we didn't, we would be saying that we wanted to make 15 gold per 1.2 bars. But we don't, we want to make it per bar, so we just have to set it straight. If you are using a percentage, you can do 15% crafting times 0.12. It doesn't matter. But yet again, I was just keeping this simple, but we can keep it like that. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you're multiplying by your 1.2. Then we have to make sure our auctioning is working. So you can either go back to the group right here, override your auctioning operations, and we're going to add in an auctioning, calling this, just to make it simple, Transmutes yet again. Then for posting, yet again, you can change your hour and your post cap to whatever you like. I'm just doing it to reflect the crafting operations. And this is where we mess with our min and max profit. So firstly, just type in what you like to make. So for our crafting operation, I want to make 15% profit. So in order to reflect 15% profit in an auctioning operation, we're going to do 115% crafting as our minimum price. Our maximum, let's say we want to do 4 times crafting. And then our normal, let's just say we want to multiply by 2 and do it 2 times crafting cost. Now, normally this would be a perfectly fine operation. Yet again, remember crafting is now not on a per 1 bar basis, it's on that per 1.2 bar basis. So to change that out, we have to divide by 1.2. So we're not multiplying, this has to be the opposite of what we're doing, so we're dividing by 1.2. So that is literally all we do. If you want this to be nicer, you can put this in parentheses just to make it kind of look nicer. It's up to you. There we go. Once again, it doesn't really matter, but we're just going to add that divide by 1.2. And there we go. After you have all of that set up, you are good to go. As long as your expected profit on the tooltip is above your minimum price, you'll be able to restock these transmutes just as normal items. Now, of course, keep in mind that TSM does not use the current price on the auction house, and it never does. So if something does not line up exactly, just keep in mind how TSM works. It does not update instantaneously, so it utilizes market value of materials and the min buyout of your crafted item. It's not something regarding transmutes, it's how everything works. But with that being said, that is it. If you guys have any sort of questions or concerns, feel free to let me know in the comments down below, and I will help you out as much as possible. If you guys have a little bit more complicated issues, I highly recommend joining the Discord, and you can either DM me or use our questions channel to send screenshots, and it just kind of helps with, resolving your TSM issues, as fully text explanations can be a little bit tricky. But guys, once again, thank you so much. If you guys want to see more TSM tutorials about specific topics, feel free to let me know as well. And if you want to see more of my content, feel free to subscribe to get updated about all my releases. But everybody, yet again, thank you so much, and have a good day.